Welcome everyone, I'm Celeste.
And I'm Laura.
And we are so excited. Laura, how excited are we?
Super excited.
We are so excited to be broadcasting right here in East Perth.
That's right, every Friday night we're going to be bringing you news stories. Stories that we've heard that we think you need to hear. And not just from anyone, these are real women sharing their courageous stories from all walks of life.
So we'll definitely have some laughs. We may even have a cry.
I'll cry.
Laura will definitely cry. But for sure, we're going to have fun. Let's Talk Now is a place where we can connect, unconnect, learn something new. Now, I'm clearly not from Australia, and Laura, very obviously,
True blue.
is. So even though we come from very different backgrounds, we hope to always grow through our differences. So with that said, we have a spectacular show for you. We have two-time author Tenille Bentley.
Yep, and we also have Ricky Jess sharing her story about her breast explant.
We often hear about implants, so we're going to actually dive into about explants.
Yep. We also went out on the road and we captured an event of drinking mother cacao and doing
Yin yoga,
Yes.
super hot topic. So sit back,
grab your friends and
let's talk now.
Welcome back. Joining us on the couch today is Tenille Bentley. Tenille, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Tenille is a two-time author of Digital Consciousness and Jazz, Pinky, and the Energy Ball, as well as the founder of ELMA, which stands for
The Emotional Literacy and Mindfulness Academy for Kids.
That's excellent. So, Tenille, talk to us a little bit about how ELMA started.
Yeah, sure. So it really came about from, like, most of the things that happen in life is that we tend to think we're on a particular path and we've planned it a certain way and that's what's going to happen. And that was me. I was building companies and very successfully. I was recognised by the Prime Minister and the Governor for my work in both philanthropy and digital media. And so I thought, this is it.
That's amazing.
This is like my path. This is what I'm meant to do. And I'd built in under 2 years a $2.5 million social media agency, had 50 staff, and we were really leading the way with digital and social. But in that moment, I had what I call a flash forward, and I started to realise that I was a part of a machine that was actually disconnecting whilst connecting us all at the same time. And I wondered, what is this doing to our future generation?
So the digital machine is technology?
Yeah. So
Okay.
how we use digital, how we interact with it, why we interact with digital. And really what happened is that then caused a massive change in my business, and I ended up going into writing a book called Digital Consciousness, which is that book, and that's sort of where that came about with the partnership of digital. What are we doing with it, and what does it really mean? And then also, what is the impact that it was having on our next generation?
At ELMA, the age group is 5 to 9.
That's
and
right.
What are some of the things that they're taught?
Yeah,
walk us
so
through that.
significantly it's all based on the neuroscience of early intervention for children, right? So when we look at where kids are developing in their brain development, they effectively are at the state when we are hypnotised as adults. So when we're hypnotised, it goes straight into the subconscious mindset. So our mind is awake, but it's almost like our body's asleep, so we're kind of, it's that dreamy type state. But we're very suggestive. So someone can get us to cluck like a chicken and we're clucking and we don't know why. So you think about that state of mind between the ages of 5 to 9 is when it's most impressionable. So everything that imprints on them becomes a long-term behaviour, response and pattern when they're adults. Now the only way for them to change that when they get older is either through one of two ways, and this happens to us as adults as well. So one of two ways we change behaviour: through trauma. So anyone that's had a heartbreak, anyone that's had a massive trauma can tell.
Tell me about it. Gosh.
It changes you, right?
Yeah.
It changes you as a person. So that's the only way we can start to change those subconscious patterns that are happening in our brain that pretty much run on autopilot for us, and we wonder why we can't change. But it only changes through trauma. The other way is through repetition. So the more we repeat a certain behaviour, it becomes a habit, and then that habit. And when we start to tune into our thoughts, and we teach this to our 5 to 9 year olds, And when we tune into our thoughts create our feelings, create our actions, create our results.
Right. Tennille, as a mom who has, now Laura's boys are 5 and 7, so this really is, perfect, very topical for her. But as a mom who has a 2.5-year-old, and we're talking about unplugging and digital consciousness and how their little brains are sponges. Often, sometimes, I don't mean to, during the day I'm calculating screen time and making sure, we're on a schedule. Sometimes I just have to give her my phone.
Yep. Yeah. So it's about. There's nothing wrong with it.
I'm not
it's not
ruining
saying,
my child, right?
No,
like,
no. We're in a world of we're in a world of digital.
I'm like, it's scary. As a mom, you don't want to ruin your child.
No,
technology it's so easy.
Yeah, and it's a part of our life, right? So it's not about getting away from it. It's about how do we minimize it and be smart about it. So yes, it's okay that we do it, but how do we do it? Do we download what they're going to watch and then switch off the Wi-Fi so they can watch it on the device? Because if they're watching it on the device and the Wi-Fi is emitting, they've got no barrier between their minds and their brains and their developmental. There was a neuroscientist in Germany that showed that he's coining it digital dementia because there's overstimulation of one part of the brain and understimulation of other parts of the brain. So what we want to do is there's a few key things you can do as a parent, really easy things. Make sure that when they're watching their devices that it's already been downloaded, switch off the Wi-Fi. Make sure you use that nighttime activation thing on your phone where it goes orange, because what that has to do is it tunes in with the circadian rhythms of our natural cycles. So when it's an orangey type of screen by the end of the night, it helps us sleep better, because what happens is we get injected, the chemical in our brain is melatonin starts, and that's what helps us start to feel sleepy. And that only happens when it starts getting darker. So that's why at night it's nice to have low lights and things like that, because the melatonin starts, and then we have a really good night's sleep. In the morning, it's serotonin.
Unless you have a 2-year-old.
Unless you have a 2-year-old, yeah. And unless you're giving them a device before they go to bed, then that's also going to be an issue. So and it's just about timed effort. So, okay, give them half an hour max. Don't let them sit on it for hours on end. 20-minute intervals is fine. Make sure you're also mindful of what they're watching.
Right.
Because you've got to remember they're a sponge. Okay, so what they see and what they react to, they will absolutely, and you know this.
Oh, absolutely.
Anything you say, they repeat.
They
right?
repeat it. Yeah,
Like the swear words in the car.
They repeat often the things you don't want them to repeat.
In the most inappropriate circumstances.
Yeah, exactly. In front of everyone, and then they all think you're a bad mother.
Tennille, is there a difference though between gender? So do girls and boys have different brain patterns at that age?
Well, with girls and boys, so girls tend to have more mirror neurons than men or boys. Okay, so and this adapts to our corporate environment even. When I used to teach in corporate, it was, as women, we see a lot of women heading up in the executive ladder and they become very masculine, right? That's by no fault of their own. It's because at the time when we first went into the corporate world, there weren't many female leaders for us to mirror. And it's a natural reaction for us to mirror. And so the mirror neurons in the brain are the things that help us. It's a survival instinct, by tribe, we mirror, we go, oh, they do that, right, I'm going to do that. But women have 5 times as many mirror neurons. So with the Emotional Literacy and Mindfulness Academy with kids, with girls and boys, I notice a difference. The boys are more connected to, say, the activities, when we start doing mindful activities, which is more active-based, and the girls are more connected with the emotional-based things.
Fortnite.
Yeah.
That's a game, an online game, so you can't essentially download it like you said.
Yeah.
They have to play online.
Yeah.
Is this ruining my 5 to 7-year-old?
Well, I think anybody... Well, when you look at the content of the game, you're talking violence, you're talking guns, you're talking things that, I think if you look at it from an objective point of view, it's not good for them.
It's not good.
It's not. No, because it's teaching them violence. It's teaching them how they're not... You imagine watching those images and however many hours they get hooked into it. This is patterning into their mind, and then you wonder why they chuck a tantrum when you take something away from them or when something doesn't happen, and then they've got aggression issues. So I see it with the kids that come to me between 5 to 9, and a lot of them have got gaming issues. But it's not the game that's the issue. It's the people giving them the games.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank
You're
you so
very
much
welcome.
for just sharing your wisdom with us.
No worries.
And your books.
And your
Can't wait to
books.
read them.
Thank you.
I'm going to read this to my daughter. Now, can I read my daughter?
As early as you want.
Okay.
Yep. Yep.
Great.
There's also a free digital version of that for people who can't get access to the book, and then hopefully they can download it.
Download it. And well, Tennille, please let our viewers know your website if
Sure.
somebody wants to learn more about
Yeah,
it.
it's emotionalliteracyacademy.com. Yeah.
Excellent. Great. So we will be right back after this short moment.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Now. Joining us on the couch is Ricky Jess. Ricky, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Now, you have an incredible health story. Can you tell us about it?
Yes, I sure can. I had a pretty hefty 10-year journey with a lot of medical issues. I elected to have breast implants at quite a young age after being, extremely flat-chested. I was modelling at the time. And I think as women, we're just put on so much, we have so much pressure to fit a certain mould and look a certain way. And I think for me at 19, sadly wasn't even an option to just love myself the way I was. And, I had a pretty good body, but I had no boobs, and it just wasn't really something that I thought I could just, roll with.
Right.
So wait, you got your breast implants done at 19?
19, very young.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, that's young.
And I think that young women are doing it even
Yeah,
younger
it's actually
nowadays.
not that uncommon these days. Back then it was.
To be, yeah, right.
It was still like, well, she's had a boob job, but now it's
Yeah.
almost like, just going and buying a handbag, an expensive one.
Absolutely,
But,
yeah.
Right,
It's very, very common. So I was modelling at the time. I was 19, I was 10 AA. I sort of figured, they weren't going to get much bigger at that age.
Right.
And I'd sort of had a few issues at a modelling job where I was very athletic. I spent a lot of time at the gym, and I always got put up for swimsuit jobs. And it was a bit of an embarrassing experience that I had. Like, we're supposed to go 1-for-1 in a showing, and I just couldn't fill out 90% of the range of the swimwear, and I had to send the other girl out constantly. And I just thought, like, I'd been thinking about it for a year. It seemed I kind of needed them for my job.
Did you start getting more jobs? Did it
yeah,
really,
funnily
did you
enough.
feel like it really impacted your modelling career?
It did take off in the
Okay.
swimwear department, but funnily enough, like, that's where the sort of fashion modelling ended. I thought I had no problems with my breast implants for the next 12 years, They were great. But I started to develop a lot of health issues that were unexplained. And I saw a procession of medical professionals, and never once did anyone ever mention my breast implants being an issue, even though my symptoms didn't make sense. Like,
What symptoms?
okay, so initially, I put on weight very fast after having them, and I just sort of thought, well, I'm 19, I'm getting to that age where people start to put on weight.
Right.
I started to get anxiety, but I thought I didn't even know it was anxiety. I thought, I'm just highly strong, I'm a perfectionist, this and that. Like mild symptoms that could be put down to just everyday life, you know?
Right. Things that you experience
Yeah,
for multiple reasons.
It's looking back
Yeah.
now that I put the pieces together, knowing
Absolutely.
the symptoms, but it was 4 years later that things really started to take a bad turn. I injured my knee running, and I partially tore my ACL, only slightly. It should have been something that healed itself, and it didn't. It just got worse and worse. So I had multiple cortisone injections, which failed to work. And he said, look, it looks like there's something else going on here. I'm going to refer you to a rheumatologist. She did a heap of blood work, and it was perfect. There was nothing wrong except for an elevated ANA response, which is showing that your body's fighting something. I had no rheumatoid factor. Everything was
Everything checked
fine.
out.
Yeah. And so they were very confused.
And the whole time, your breasts felt fine through this?
No problems.
Not sore?
Perfect boobs.
And I can
Bad
see,
knees.
I can see how you would overlook
Yeah.
something. I mean, your knee, you don't necessarily think.
No,
Why
right,
would it
there
have
to
anything to do
there.
with my breast
Yeah.
implant?
Right.
But I don't understand how, from day dot, looking back now,
Yeah,
like I'm sort of
hindsight.
jumping ahead.
Hindsight's 2020.
But I didn't know about breast implant illness at the time, and in the end I was like, look, I'm just going to do them one more time and replace them. I was 6 days out from surgery, and I was researching the newly found risks of anaplastic large cell lymphoma with highly textured implants, which is what I'd had for 14 years. And it led me to a support page. All these
Right.
women that had been diagnosed with everything that I'd
Support.
been diagnosed with, biggest one being rheumatoid arthritis, Hashimoto's, chronic
Yep.
fatigue, chronic pain,
All the symptoms.
all the stuff that I had, and I was like, oh my gosh, it was just a massive light bulb moment.
Right.
I showed my husband, he's like, babe, get them out.
This is
they're
it.
out. Someone from sharing their story put me in front of
Front
the
of this.
information. So if it wasn't for that person, I would have
You
been
would've-
recovering from another set of toxic implants that I
Right.
wouldn't be able to afford to get rid of.
Right.
And, that's why I do what I do, because, if it wasn't for someone doing
bring-
that, I would be in a very different position than I am now.
Ricky, thanks for sharing your story. We're going to be right back after this break, but if you are considering this procedure, please consult your GP.